The Jim Harbaugh situation at Michigan is pretty interesting right now. So over the weekend, is it the weekend? Yes, still the weekend, Colin. So over the weekend, Bruce Feldman from Fox Sports tweeted out that there was a lot of optimism that a new deal was imminent at Michigan through 2026. So an extension for Jim Harbaugh. And that would be wrapping up soon. Again, that according to Bruce Feldman, who's about as plugged in as anyone on this sort of deal. Optimism's a funny word, though, isn't it? So as soon as I saw that tweet, I answered, and I put out a little tweet of my own, at Late Kick Josh, by the way. I put out a little tweet of my own, and I said, is there optimism around the fan base? Now, it's a very unscientific poll, but according to Late Kick Michigan, no, man, there's not a lot of optimism around the fan base. In fact, I got about 80-20 no versus yes, and so it's just kind of blah. And I feel for you guys because I know how this must look to you, and what it looks to you, or what it looks like is, and it's the same to me, is just kind of accepting a relegation to mediocrity on the national stage. Now, Michigan football in reality is still flying higher than 80% to 85% of the sport, but that's not where you want to hang out. If you're a genius, you don't want to be making 80 to 85s on your tests. And Michigan football, at least metaphorically, they think they're capable of being a Rhodes Scholar, or as we say in Georgia, a Rogue Scholar. Much better. That's a much more modern term, Rogue Scholar. And right now they just can't be that because they don't have the right leadership. I guess, of course, the side note there could be that maybe Harbaugh's just a guy who has to make it several years into his tenure before things finally click, and then he looks like a genius again. I guess that always could happen. I don't expect that. I would be genuinely surprised at this point if Jim Harbaugh's ever going to put a product on the field at Michigan that even remotely competes with what Ohio State is doing under Ryan Day, what they did before Ryan Day under Urban Meyer. I view from a distance, granted, I view those programs as viewing football through totally different lenses. And so that's where I think they are. And they're not just competing against Ohio State, man. They got several others in the Big Ten. And if you want to arrive on the national stage, you have to think like the Buckeyes do, which is we're competing with Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma, the usual suspects. Should he be back, though? That's kind of the question that a lot of people are asking. And I have two questions, whereas I normally would have one. The normal question I would have, which I've already asked on this show tonight, is, okay, well, you're asking, should he be back? My counter is, do you have a definitive upgrade out there? Now, that's normally where this would end for me. But in this case, I have a second question. So the first one is, do you have a definitive upgrade? My number two question is, for Michigan, do you have a new vision for your program? Because if you don't have a new vision for your program, I don't really care who you're plugging in as head coach, to be honest with you. I'll give you an extreme example here. Okay, Michigan folks know exactly what I'm talking about. The identity of Michigan football, Michigan athletics, specifically Michigan football, how they choose to run their program, the vision for Michigan football, what we value versus what other people value, how far we're able to go versus what we're willing to put in. How all in are we willing to be, in other words? Just a different philosophy up there. I'm not knocking it. It's just different. If you're someone like me, who grew up in the Southeastern Conference footprint, I got to be honest with you, it's a little bit foreign, but it is what it is. So let me give you an extreme example. What would happen if Nick Saban called Michigan today and said, I want that job? And he took the job. Let's say they got rid of Jim Harbaugh and he took the job, but the vision for the program was going to be the same. How well would Nick Saban succeed at Michigan, do you think? And you may say, well, he's Nick Saban. He'd succeed anywhere. Well, that's only true if Nick Saban's allowed to build a program 100% his way, regardless of where he goes. I mean, that was the entire premise behind him taking Alabama. You're going to allow me to essentially be the general manager and head coach of this program. I'm building everything the way I want it built. You don't believe this if you're an outsider. If you're close to Michigan, you know exactly what I'm about to say is true. Even if Nick Saban went to Michigan, he'd get pushback. He'd get pushback on a lot of things. He'd get told no on some things. I mean, from the size of his personnel department to the number of analysts he'd want on his staff to the size of ancillary programs. To you and I, it's ancillary. To him, it's necessary, like nutrition, sports management. Like, there are a lot of different things. A recruiting budget. I mean, are you kidding me? You think they'd do at Michigan what they do at Alabama? They wouldn't. It's not that they're incapable of it. They're certainly capable of it. It's that they wouldn't be willing to. And so my question goes back to, with Jim Harbaugh being there right now, a lot of people are asking, should he be back? That's not even the main question to me. The main question to me is there going to be a noticeable change in philosophy up there, a program philosophy? If there's not, For the time being, given the structure of the sport, to be honest with you, I don't really care who the head coach is. Now, if the answer is yes, or if I'm off base on that, and it really isn't the structure overall in place that's been impeding things just as much as it's been not having the right head coaching candidate, I'd be happy to be proven wrong. Trust me, I'd love for Michigan to be a perennial powerhouse. That would be very good for me. But thus far, it hasn't happened, and I think the reason that it hasn't happened extends well beyond just who the head coach is. So, going to keep a close eye on this. I hope that the full story on this comes out sometime in the not too distant future after everything's died down.